This is the L.I.P. Extra. Hello again, I'm Ryan from Positive Athlete, here with another episode of the L.I.P. Extra. Today's subject is women in sports, and our host Scott Peterson was fortunate enough to get the chance to talk to Dr. Jen Welter, who you may know as the first woman to ever coach in the NFL. Dr. Welter has an amazing story about excelling in an area that is almost completely dominated by males, and has some really great insight on how men and women can join together to continue to make progress in this area. You're going to love her outlook and her story. So let's jump into episode 5 of the L.I.P. Extra.
We're joined by Jen Welter, Dr. Jen Welter, the author of a lot of firsts. The first female coach in the NFL, the first running back to play in a men's professional football team, the first to be in Madden 20, first female to be shown in 20. Welcome to the show, Dr. Welter.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's great to stop by in this new virtual world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So take us through this journey. How did it get started with you?
For, I guess, just like it would be for so many people, it started with the love of the game. And for me, being a multi-sport athlete, it was, as a kid, a love of a lot of games, right? Whether it was video games or card games or tennis, I wanted to compete at everything. And it wasn't like I had to beat somebody else. I was often competing with myself. And I just had a mentality of curiosity in the world. And I think I still do, right? Figuring out human puzzles now, I like to say. But very self-motivated. And in Vero Beach, Florida, football is like a way of life. It really is, the Friday night lights, the town shuts down, everybody goes, and you're not as much watching NFL football or college football. Like, those are the biggest games. And I remember as a kid thinking that those were the brightest lights I'd ever seen, and that the players looked like real life superheroes out on the field with the helmets and the pads, and I wanted to be one of them. And I don't know when it happened exactly, but I remember that football was also the first place that somebody really told me there was a difference between what boys were allowed to do and what girls were allowed to do. And I wasn't raised like that. My mom is an artist. She would create beauty in everything that she did. And my dad is he's a Vietnam veteran with a silver star and 2 bronze stars, who went on to become a race car driving doctor. So like this crazy belief in how you do things, it was kind of a, wait, we can't do the same things. And so I ended up finding a place, I think, best in team sports, because though people have in their mind that I'm really big, I guess because I've done a lot of big things, and I often say in my mind I'm XXL, but in clothes you better just go ahead and get me a small, because I'm only 5'2". So as an athlete who was often underestimated and always told I was too little, I just kind of found a place in team sports that, like, you didn't have to be the answer in and of yourself. You could be a really great teammate. And so team sports became just a part of everything that I wanted to do.
Talk about that bridge then between playing and then getting this opportunity to coach in the NFL.
Well, that's a long bridge. Definitely not a short one. I played women's pro football, and I always say pro because the most we ever got paid was $1 a game. So we were pro football. We couldn't afford the professional. There was budget restrictions on that. Mm-hmm. So I played women's pro football for 14 years. In that time, we won 4 championships. One of the greatest dynasties to ever exist in women's tackle football, and that was the Dallas Diamonds. We won championships in 04, 05, 06, and 08. Don't ask about 07, still a sore subject. Then I went on to play on the very first U.S. women's national team, which was fielded in 2010. We won a gold medal in Stockholm, Sweden. And then in 2013, I was on the second U.S. national team, and we won a gold medal in Vanta, Finland. Then at the end of 2013, it was probably one of the toughest times of my life, because the team that we really had developed a family around. And like I said, one of the best football teams to ever be fielded folded. And none of us knew what we were going to do. And we were all a little lost. We were all definitely hurt. And I get this call from a team called the Texas Revolution. And the Texas Revolution was an indoor football league team, actually owned partially by Tim Brown, Hall of Famer Tim Brown. And the team wanted to meet with me. And I really didn't know what they wanted, but I do know I was wearing really tall shoes into the meeting that day. Like, I was going to be at least 5'4" when I walked in the door. And the meeting was really interesting as somebody who at that time had already gotten my doctorate in psychology. So it was a really crazy combination in 2013 of a football playing doctor, which nobody could kind of wrap their head around. And I looked at the scene, and the head coach wanted to be anywhere but where he was. It was like, if he didn't make eye contact with me, maybe this girl would go away, that she would cease to exist. And at the same time, the owner of the team in a plum purple suit was trying to sell me a used car. He was way too excited and way too animated. And I was like, what is going on here? And Tommy eventually said, Jen Welter, we are so excited to meet you. We think it would be amazing if you would go through a day of training camp with our guys. And I was like, oh, so let me get this straight. You want me to what? Come in and maybe run some ladder drills, catch some passes with the guys, smile for the cameras? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, absolutely not. That is an insult to me as one of the best football players in the world. And if I was any one of your guys on your team, I would absolutely hate it. If you want to do anything with me and your football team, I either do everything that they do, step for step, hit for hit for all of training camp, or I do nothing at all. And as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I knew two things without a shadow of a doubt. Number one, I was going to play pro football with men. And number two, I might have just gotten myself killed. It was nothing I ever set out to do. In fact, people always ask me what my end game was in football. Like, oh yeah, you've been playing so long, what are you trying to play in the NFL? And I'd be like, dude, I'm 5'2", 130 pounds. I am not crazy. I would never do that. But apparently God doesn't like never, because now faced with that situation of either, being a publicity stunt or, really making a statement, there was no other choice for me. And I didn't necessarily feel like I was the best person to do it. And at the same time, all of the guys learned very quickly, like, they were gonna have to cut me or kill me, because it was never quitting. Like, that wasn't gonna happen. I was not gonna be the reason why anybody looked at women or girls in football and say, we had a girl once, ... And to close the door firmer than it had ever been closed before. And thankfully, I really had great guidance from the guys. Like, we actually came together in a way that nobody expected. I found myself with a team full of big brothers, some happier about it than others, but eventually, you can't help but respect somebody who is out there taking all the hits, doing everything that they were. And I remember Coach Dub one day said, you know, Welter, I never in my life thought that I would see this. I've been a football guy my whole life. And he's like, it's something special. And he said, if I could take the heart out of your chest and put it in every single one of these guys, we would be undefeated. Mm-hmm. And as someone who went from being undisputed, one of the best in the world, to now somebody who was scratching and clawing and fighting to be on practice squad, I really learned a lot about not only myself, but how to be a great teammate to those guys and how we could, you know, be a part of each other's locker rooms and support system. And we got really close in the process. Next year, we had a new head coach come in, Wendell Davis, former Dallas Cowboy, and he saw how the guys responded to me, and he was blown away. He ended up sitting me down and grinding me like on football and all of these things. We hit it off, and the next day, all he could say was, "You have to coach my football team." And I said, "No." So what do you mean, no? And I said, no, girls don't coach football. Like, I can't do that. And he said, not a lot of guys are going to give you this opportunity. You're taking this job. And I said no. And the next day he called me back and told me about myself. He said, do you remember how I told you not a lot of guys were going to give you this opportunity or we're taking this job? I said, yeah. He said, good, I took it for you. You're coaching for me. And by the way, you can't quit. Otherwise, the entire narrative surrounding women coaching and men's pro football will be, we had a girl once and she quit. Thankfully, through that opportunity, I realized that I knew more than I thought I maybe had. I had been teaching aerobics since I was 18, and in gyms and breaking things down for people, as well as breaking them down for, you know, rookies in football who were coming in to play the game for the very first time. And so it was like, I knew more than I thought I did, but I wouldn't have made that leap on my own. And then when I was coaching for that team, you know, progress is definitely cumulative. It's not one person by themselves. It's something happens somewhere else that triggers this, that opens a door. And when Sarah Thomas was hired as the first female ref or full-time female ref in NFL history, a reporter asked Bruce Arians if he could ever see a female coaching in the NFL, and his response was simple. The second a woman makes these guys better, she'll be hired. So I talked to my head coach about it, and my head coach said, well, we should call Bruce. Can you get me his number? And I thought, like, didn't you play in the NFL? Can't you get his number? But I took it as a challenge and eventually called the Cardinals and worked my way to Bruce's assistant, Wes. So I left a message kind of on behalf of myself, as if I wasn't myself, basically saying that my head coach wanted to talk to their head coach because he had heard the statement about a woman coaching in the NFL, and though it was not the NFL, it was pro football, and he thought BA should know. So apparently I was really convincing, because about 2 weeks later, BA called back and they talked, and I eventually got invited out to OTAs, and obviously we see where that went.
It's pretty exciting when you get that call, but did you feel like were you still kind of worried as you go into the NFL about the skepticism of some of the athletes about having a female coach, and there are probably some people who are still skeptical out there today, you know, just in terms of saying, okay, so was that a publicity stunt, or did they really feel like you could help them?
Well, first and foremost, I think the difference in that mentality, first of all, is if you took my gender off of my resume and you read master's degree in sports psychology, PhD in psychology, 14-year veteran, 4 Super Bowls and 2 gold medals, as well as being an 8-time Pro Bowler, that question doesn't even exist, right? So if I was a publicity stunt, then I've worked way too hard, right? Because a publicity stunt really doesn't have any meat to it. But the truth of the matter is that we never had a problem with the players. The outside narrative is painful at times. It is absolutely brutal, but you have a lot of people who have never been in the locker room and never been out on the field and never played the game. The truth is really that players want to get better. And when you can reach them, you can teach them. And Bruce did something really smart. He actually talked to the leaders of his locker room before making the decision to see if they would be behind him making that move. And that, I think, is a great lesson in leadership. Instead of saying like, oh, well, we're going to do this and you just have to listen to her. It was, we have an opportunity to do something really special with somebody who is highly capable. What do you think? And when the players said, absolutely, then he moved forward. The other thing is, you know, the players were hilarious and still are to this day. They're often my best advocates. Those guys knew everything about me before I had walked in the door. They had seen my game tape. They knew I had played football against men. They knew I had a PhD. Like, they knew everything. And athlete to athlete, like, that's the greatest compliment you can give somebody, is to break down their tape. And the guys would be like, oh man, coach, you were a beast off the edge. Like, you gonna teach me that speed brush? You know what I mean? And really, I think a lot of the times we don't give guys enough credit, particularly elite athletes. Those guys were so excited to be a part of history, and they knew that we had gone through a lot of the same journey in terms of overcoming the expectations of others, right? And, you know, doing what most people had thought wasn't possible in this world. And they were like, man, we thought it was hard for us, coach, but for you to get here? And, you know, I think that that's something that shouldn't be lost, because, you know, it really becomes a powerful statement of, you know, what these men are all about.
Your story is so important because, and I'm glad you told it the way you did, because I think that as people view what you've done, this isn't so much a story about wanting to compete with men as it is what somebody is capable of, especially a female, in what was always being perceived as a male world, and what females are capable of anyway. Is it that you are capable of so many things? Would you say that characterizes more of what your message is?
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, I think that the evolution of, you know, inequality in terms of men and women isn't women fighting against men. I think it's women and men fighting for each other. And that's such an important thing for me, because first of all, I didn't go looking for the NFL, like banging down doors, you have to hire me, I'm a woman. That never happened. And there was also not even a conversation really surrounding women coaching in men's pro football until I was doing it, right? So it wasn't as if, you know, we need a woman on staff, let's go find one. That conversation wasn't even there. Now, thankfully now there is a pipeline that is working towards increasing opportunities for women in football. But that started with what we did in Arizona. You know, I wasn't a product of that pipeline. The product was a pipeline of us. And that's a way bigger thing. You know, it wasn't, and it happened by really great men, honestly believing in me and believing in us, in being able to do good things together. I often tell people, you know, you got to look at it this way in terms of progress. If you look at a vault and it is closed from the inside, there's no windows and there's only one door, and there are only men in the room, then a man has to open the door for you. Not that women wouldn't, but there was nobody in the position that could. And then if you are that woman, it's your opportunity and responsibility to guarantee that door doesn't get closed tighter because of you, and that you are somebody who makes sure that you're pushing for the opportunities for other women as well.
Jen, thanks so much for spending time with us, and I hope everybody will go to jenwelter.com. There's one N in the Jen, and we'll have this up on the screen. But Jen, thanks for this time. There's so much great information too on that website. If you ever want Jen to speak, if you ever want to come to one of her camps, if you want to buy her books, this is a lady that is busy, as you can tell, all the time. And we appreciate the fact that you'd spend some time with all of these positive athletes who no doubt will take a very positive message out of what you've talked today. So thanks so much, Dr. Welter, for spending this time with us.
An absolute pleasure, and thank you for all that you guys are all doing to, put a positive light in the world, especially in these times where there are a lot of things that are tough. There's a lot of things that we can't control, right? We can't control so many things, but we can control the impact that we have, the things that we do, and how we treat each other. So thank you for having me and keeping that positive light for so many.
Thank you, Jen.
You got it. My pleasure.